right, welcome to Jail Talk. We're here back again with a new episode featuring our special guest today, Rachel Turi, who's a registered dietitian, works for our Skillet kitchen division. And of course, Kylie joining me again as always. So we're just really happy to have Rachel with us today. Rachel's going to talk a little bit about what she does for us, but a lot about kind of the jail dietitians and diets and menus and everything that involves jail food service. So, Rachel, to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, what brought you to Turnkey, and kind of your experience in corrections?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm Rachel. I'm from Minnesota. I've been a dietitian for 7-8 years now. I've kind of worked in all sorts of areas, from sports nutrition, private practice. I've worked in like restaurant menu creation, all sorts of areas. But I had the opportunity to work in the juvenile justice program of Utah. So similar setting, but with juveniles. And it was just right away, I knew that it was a really fun area that I like to be in. Definitely not the norm for what you think of when you go to school for dietitian.
Right.
I had never even heard of it.
I think that's normal for everybody in any field of corrections.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people say, I want to grow up and be a police officer. Nobody ever said, I want to grow up and work in a jail.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I thought I was just going to tell people what to eat. But I lived in Utah for a few years, moved back to Minnesota, and found Turnkey / Skillet, and it's awesome. Yeah, I like it a lot.
So when you're looking at, I mean, obviously you're approaching every jail a little bit different, but so what would you say is the number one thing that when you start on a menu for a jail, what's the first thing you're looking at and saying, okay, this is what we got to do first, and then the rest of it will flow behind?
Yep, that's a really good question. Each state or kind of part of the country has different requirements. So I have to know those or be told them or whatever. And that was something that I had to learn upon, starting this job essentially. So like Georgia has different requirements than North Carolina, than Wisconsin, than Minnesota. So I have to know what the state is essentially. Calorie requirements are huge. There's national guidelines, but each state or facility can have their own preferences. Basically, they can specify to me like we want this many calories versus that national standard. So I have to know calories, and then menu pattern is another one, whether they want hot meals all day long or they want a cold breakfast and 2 hot meals for lunch and dinner. Those are kind of the key pieces I have to know. Once I know the state, the calories, the menu pattern, and then any other specifics. Some facilities, even though it's not in their state law, they want milk for every meal, for example. So I just have to know any basic requirements that they also want fulfilled. And then I can kind of go with it from there. We have huge, I've built a big database of recipes and menu items and all of that. So I can just build the menu as I want according to those things.
Sure.
And then the cycle length is another big thing. So whether they want a menu for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 3 weeks, just to change it up for each facility. So those are the pieces I need. And then from there, I just build away. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously those are big deals. And you talk about the different regions. I know, but I think our listeners would want to know too, our viewers. You're certified in a lot of states because you have to be, because we operate in several states. But talk about that. I mean, like you mentioned it briefly, some of the challenges, like Georgia's different from North Carolina, different from here. How widely are they varied? I mean, like, what do you see that you're like, wow, obviously you have your opinions to say this is probably more appropriate than this, but talk about some of those differences and how wide the variance is.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So Minnesota and North Carolina have the same guidelines where they require like 5 servings total of fruits and vegetables in a day, and then 2 servings of milk or dairy, which could be cheese or yogurt or something like that too. And then it has to be the fruits, for example, I couldn't just give them 2 servings of juice. There has to be a fresh fruit and a juice, or canned or fresh, I should say, and a juice. And then North Carolina is the same way. So those 2 are, from a dietitian standpoint, the most adequate, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
we would want them to get
Sure.
fruits and veggies and things like that. Other states don't care at all. It's just,
Okay.
we want these calories. That's about it. So then, and of course, things like fruits and vegetables are more expensive. And,
Sure.
you know, it is a business. We're trying to keep cost at a good level. So those states are much more expensive, but much more well-rounded in terms of nutrition, I would say, than the other states where we can kind of fluff it up with things like extra biscuits or cake and all of that.
Right.
But still having to meet those calories.
Right.
So it ranges a lot.
And I think you brought up a really interesting thing about food service in jails, and I think in general. And I'm going to get back to the cost part of it too, because that's a huge component. But I think a lot of times when you see a jail requirement of 2,300, 2,400 calories, you can get there pretty easy with just your standard meal. When you see the 2,800, 3,000 calories, that's what happens, right? It's the fluff.
Yeah.
It's the fluff
I always say,
in
I
every
gotta
sense of the word. It's like bread, and maybe extra jelly. And when you're doing that, it's like you're looking at it, I'm sure, with a critical eye and an eye towards the business.
Yep, exactly. It is very funny to, I mean, we've got all the way up to, I've had to create a 3,200 calorie menu before. And it's
Holy cow.
Wow, how do you do that for, again, we'll get more into pricing, but for, far less than $2.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just fluffing it up a lot. But the base menu is typically around 2,500 calories, and that one is easy to get while still having the right things in there, and then you just add other things in.
Yeah.
So for that jail that you had to create the 3,200 calorie count, was that a state standard, or was that just like the jail asking for that?
Yeah, that was just the jail. So that was, I actually had to create them a 2,700 calorie menu, a 3,000 calorie menu, and a 3,200 calorie menu, along with the costing of all of it. And then I think basically they were going to look at all factors and see what they wanted to go with. But
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that was just that was in North Carolina, and they were like, let's just, I don't know, really feed these people well. Don't go hungry.
There is the adage that full inmate is a happy inmate, and so the happy inmate then tends to be a little bit more manageable.
Absolutely.
Fair.
I get that. I get that totally.
I get hangry too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, hangry is a real thing. So then costs. Let's talk about it. Let's just throw it out there. I know, anybody that has children in school has heard through the news, through social media, whatever, our inmates, our adults in custody eat better than our kids at school. And some of that is through cost, some of that's through whatever program it's going through. You've got experience with children and adults, obviously. When you're talking about, let's just throw it out there, maybe $1.80 a day or per meal cost, like how are you, like, is that just a puzzle piece you're pulling from all your resources to say, how can we make it work?
Yeah, absolutely. And like we always stick it. I don't know that I've ever created one that's over $1.50, maybe a little bit, but then I've been able to tweak it. But it's looking at every single thing. Just earlier today, I had to do that. Every single item I know the pricing for. It's in our system. And if I pull a cost analysis and I see like Wednesday in week 3 was really high for whatever reason, I will go through and see like what can I replace that with? Maybe instead of broccoli, I'll give them pinto beans or something like that. That still fits the requirement, but it's cheaper. So it is very much a jigsaw puzzle. Of and then I have to, once I swap something out, so say I swap that broccoli for pinto beans, I have to go then check the nutrition analysis again and make sure it still also fits the guidelines. So it's like a puzzle, all of it, which is fun. I like that side of it, but it is, there's a lot of pieces that go into it.
Well, and I mean, I think that's I keep going back to like, you're doing one in Wisconsin today, and then later this afternoon you're doing one in Georgia, and then somebody says, hey, we've got this jail in Utah. I mean, and are you going back there and checking the guidelines? You're just like, wait,
got them all down.
At this point, yes, I do. Honestly, at this point, I do have them down. But that took me a couple months. Like, I had to have all those emails starred with the requirements or written down. Yeah. But now I just remember it all.
Right.
But it
So
took
do you
some
have
time.
your standard menu then that you're kind of building from that?
Exactly.
Or, yep. Okay.
Yep. I have kind of a standard, like the North Carolina, Minnesota type of one that's much more fruit and vegetable centered. And then I have the like Georgia, every other state standard one. And then I just build on those, add calories, subtract calories. And then even so with different, we were writing proposals or putting together proposals for like Louisiana, and they really, really, really wanted more rice and beans. So I just had to go into the menu and swap a bunch of things out for rice and beans, which is something that I wouldn't normally do. We have those on there several times a week, but I wouldn't want to give them the same thing every day because I would get bored of it, but they wanted more of it. So we are able to adjust things like that based on the state or maybe what a sheriff told us, and little things like that. And we try and, please them with those little changes if we can. Obviously, if it's going to cost us a lot more, we can't. But
Well, I've been in a couple of meetings with the folks from Louisiana, and I know when they've mentioned that rice and beans, it's a cultural thing. So is that something you're looking at sometimes? I mean, outside of Louisiana, do you look at that and say, okay, well, I know the answer to this, but I'm leading you down the road. Right? There's some differences in foods on our menus from, say, the southern half of the country to the northern half.
Yep. Yeah, very much. So, like, the Minnesota menu is different, than, the southern menus. What we're working on doing is kind of making them more universal, simply because there are things like grits that we were serving in all the southern states, and then we weren't serving them in the Midwestern states because they're not a common thing. But I looked into it and found out that what we were serving in Minnesota, kind of in place of the grits, was way more expensive.
Okay.
So we kind of tested around, and I made a menu for them that kind of balanced it out and did a little bit of things like grits because, like, I grew up eating those sometimes too. It's not something that's out of the question, but still has in some more common things. And then go from there. And it's as little as, like, some states, like North Carolina, prefers tortillas instead of bread. Whereas Georgia, if I were to put tortillas on the menu instead of bread, they would be a very So those little things, which is where everyone who's worked here for a long time has been really helpful in that. Like Karen knows, like, they will not touch a tortilla. Don't put it on the menu. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So.
I was curious about that. So do you keep track of like the waste at all that is in jails too? So like if you build a menu and then the inmates don't like a lot of the things that are on there, and even though you have to have your calorie count and everything, but then there's a lot of waste, do you keep track of all that?
That is an awesome question. No, I don't, but the food service supervisors are I've only had good experience with them being like, they really don't like this thing, or they really like this. And because sometimes it's things you don't expect, like some facilities really love broiled cabbage, whereas some don't. So it's the kitchen staff that lets me know those things. When I send them a menu, I get great feedback, which is the goal of it. Like, I send it not to say, like, you absolutely have to follow this, but pretty much, and then give me feedback, because then the end goal is that they follow the menu to a T that I send them. So they're really helpful in sending back suggestions or little things like that. Or some facilities may not have the equipment, like, to make, like, we have some facilities that don't have the equipment to make boiled eggs, so then I just change it to make it scrambled eggs every day. Or fruit is not allowed in a lot of jails because they'll make alcohol out of it. But some facilities allow it. So it just, either the staff there lets me know, or from previous experience for people who have worked for Skillet have let me know. And so that we try and prevent that, because you don't want to be wasting the food. Then what's
So going into that a little more, maybe, so when you're looking at a menu and recipes, who's doing the recipe? Are you making the recipe, or are you just analyzing the recipe for nutritional content?
A little bit of both. When I came on, all these recipes were already in the system. They were recipes that have been there for a really long time, probably. And so then those recipes that were already in there, then I entered them into our system and analyzed them, because basically these recipes had been created but hadn't been analyzed. So then I just kind of did little tweaks or whatever I needed to make them fit the guidelines. Most of them did, and then I've also created new recipes. So that's kind of the goal going forward, is to, these same facilities that we've had for a long time have had the same menus.
Yeah.
And it's a 4-week cycle. Like, it does have a lot of variety in it, but I want to create more recipes, more items that they can, so that way, in 6 months we give them a completely new set of menus.
Right. Nutrition-driven menus, then that you're knowing, okay, if we put this in there, I know what's in it.
Yep.
And I think, too, then you're looking at, when you start saying, okay, well, we're going to put some new items, maybe just utilizing things that we're already purchasing different ways.
Yes.
Yeah,
yep.
Repurpose all that
Exactly. Like, it's pretty easy to use chicken and rice in 15 different ways. You can more than that, and just change the flavors or what other little additions you put into it, the spices, things like that. So it isn't that hard to make variety. It just and it's just then teaching the the staff the new recipes, because they have got a lot on their plate, so they don't always love to have new things thrown at them. But, but then it becomes easy once they get it down.
Right. So new things thrown at the staff. Yep. Now you've opened a door, so you keep doing this. New things thrown at the staff. One of the things you're going to throw at a staff in every jail, and I know it can be the bane of existence for some people, but special diets and the needs of those, not only medically, but religious. The RLUIPA is very specific about what adults in custody can do and kind of what they can be entitled to. So talk about developing those special diets and the challenges you face there.
Yep. Again, you caught me on a good day. That's what I was working for earlier. Working on earlier. So all facilities have, when we start at a facility, we have to basically guarantee them that we will get them a menu if they have someone who has any sort of a medical need. So that's usually any sort of heart disease, so we call that a cardiac menu, any level of diabetes, vegetarian, dairy-free, kidney disease or a renal diet, that's another common one, pregnancy, and then like high calorie, high protein for maybe if they're sick or they have cancer or something like that. They have just higher calorie needs. So those are often the standard. And then, you wish it was as easy as giving them a standard menu across the whole country. Right, like here, this is what I've printed out. This is the menu you use. But I try, and why it's such a difficult thing is I try and use the menu that facility is using and then just tweak it to make it fit that medical diet versus having the kitchen have to create a completely separate meal.
Right.
How can I have them use the same base and just tweak things a little bit?
Yeah, beans and rice. There's a vegan, vegetarian.
There you go. Exactly. I mean, that one's easy.
That one's easy, right?
Yeah. But still fitting enough calories. And calories are a little bit of a goofy thing with the special diets, because if you have heart disease or you have diabetes or kidney disease, like you don't, for example, that's what I've been working on is the special diets for one of our facilities that needs 3,000 calories. Well, those people don't necessarily need 3,000 calories, or we wouldn't recommend that from a dietitian standpoint. So I can drop that a little bit. But it could be very easy, but because we want it to be, these people aren't in there for a day. Like, this isn't just a quick fix menu for them. So I prefer it to be something that they can rely on for a while and use, and just make the kitchen feel not as stressed about it, because that's, I think, like if I were working in a kitchen and someone was like, I need you to create these 4 special meals and your regular meal, I'd be frustrated. So we try and make it as reasonable as possible. And then religious diets, that's another one. There's all sorts of, there's Ramadan and Passover. Those are the 2 main ones that we get requests for, and we do follow those. And so then we have to create a menu, or I have to create a menu, I should say, that again still gives them their needs but allows them to follow their what their religion wants them to, and then send that off to the facilities. And
to do that with the food, again, that you're trying to utilize existing food resources. I when I was working in the jail, I was Orange is the New Black was a pretty big deal back in the day when you guys were kids, right? But they went through a season where the kosher meal was the big deal, and that I know Florida went through that with their state DOC there, and many jails have gone through it where you gotta if I say I'm Jewish, you gotta supply me a kosher meal. So this whole industry was born of making kosher meals, pre-made, they're certified kosher meals, and then the food cost on those is like $5 to $10 a meal or more.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking a jail has a budget of $2 a meal per inmate, it's just impossible to make it. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, that's been something that we've definitely been trying to figure out. Mm-hmm. So where you kind of go with that of like we can, from a nutritional standpoint, I can create a menu that would technically fit it. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to have maybe the special items or desserts or whatever it is that mm-hmm. they focus on during those periods of time. We just remove anything they can't have. So that way it's kind of like legally it fits it and
sure.
they can eat it. But if the facility, what we typically do is if a facility does want like this special meal, we can't prepare it even because it can't be prepared in a kitchen with things that aren't kosher, for example.
Sure.
So we have to do these prepackaged meals mm-hmm. essentially from one of our vendors because that's the only way to ensure that it is kosher. Mm-hmm. The jail usually pays for that because it is so far above what our contract agreed on. So if they're okay with it, then we'll do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just kind of work with them. But that's been the biggest way that it's worked.
Well, and you mentioned legally, so that again segues me into another thing. But the menus you create also, the population you're serving, the menus you're creating for that population have to be justifiable and defendable in court because it's a notoriously litigious group of people. And so are you looking at things to say, okay, well, I've got to be able to justify this potentially in court somewhere because the jail's going to get sued to say, well, the menu says I was going to get 2,800 calories a day and I only got 2,650.
Yep.
Because I was on a special diet or
something. Right. Yeah. I don't need to pull it all the time, but some facilities will ask for it along with the menu mm-hmm.
when
they're getting audited. Like we've had a lot of jails having inspections lately, so they ask me for a signed menu, so I would just double check it or create it depending on the facility. Mm-hmm. And then I analyze it, I sign off on it, and it has my license numbers and all of that. And then I will pull the nutrition analysis for it, sign it, and send that as well so that they have everything they need. And it's a good way for me to be able to double check it before I send it all, making sure like, okay, yep, this day's a little bit low. I need to tweak that a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then once everything is in their hands, that means that I'm comfortable with it and that it is. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, Kylie's going to ask you about something in your personal life because we want to hear about it, but it's not overly personal, but it's pretty cool.
Look out.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a question, but I just wanted to brag about you for a second because I think Rachel is amazing. She's very knowledgeable about her career and being a dietitian, but on top of that, my favorite fun fact about Rachel is that she is an avid runner, and I guess you tell just a little. But what is the longest run that you've done in a stretch of time? Like one time. At one time. From one go.
Go.
Yeah.
The longest.
100 miles.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I do ultras. I don't talk about it much.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's
running.
I think it's so cool though.
Yeah. So I do ultra marathons, which is anything over a marathon. They're always in trails, so it's running through the woods. Pretty much, that's what I like to say. And I have done a 100-miler in Utah in the mountains.
Yeah. Not even just on flat ground, in the mountains. That's crazy.
In the mountains.
I always say I'm not running anywhere unless if you see me running, something's chasing me, so you should be running too. But running 100 miles anywhere, I'm food for dinner at that point. So,
How long did that take you to run?
29 hours, just under 29 hours. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's
That's
fun.
awesome.
I love it.
Yeah. That's very cool.
And I know also that you have I think a fun fact is that Rachel's dog is way bigger than her.
Yeah, you can't tell with Rachel sitting behind the table, but she's about this tall, so.
A solid 5 feet.
5 feet? Really?
On a good day.
Okay.
With your extra tall shoes on.
Caught me.
You gotta get those Skechers slip-ins. Big
Our
heels.
platform shoes every day.
That's it. No, that's good. Well, that's an amazing. I don't know, like, how do you get into that?
I've been a runner since I was 9 years old, cross country, track, all of that kind of stuff. I started doing marathons, and then my dad actually introduced me to like trail running and ultras because he did it. And I did my first one. It was like, gosh, this is so much more fun because it's in the woods. Like I can't do road running. I get so bored. Like, what do you look at? I don't understand. I've done marathons, but I don't really like them. So it's fun, and you get to walk. That's a fun fact about ultra running is you're in the trails, so you get to walk and it's okay, and nobody gets, nobody judges you if you walk, and that's great.
Right.
Well, yeah, when you're doing 100 miles, I would hope that you would run the whole
You're gonna walk it.
A lot of snacks.
Okay, there you go.
In ultras, so that's another
Very good
thing. You get to drink pop and eat cookies.
There you go. Hey, I'm in.
Maybe I need to get into ultra running.
I'm halfway to being an ultra marathoner is what I just heard her say.
Snacks and
'cause
pop.
I like to eat snacks and cookies.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm there.
Yeah.
There's one fun
If I run to the fridge to get a snack or some
ultra.
cookies, I'm basically doing
Basically an ultra,
it. I mean, if I add that up over time. So
Yeah, you've done 100 miles.
I've run 100 miles in my life.
Yeah, maybe.
We're not going to go back and measure it. But over 52 years, I've probably run that. That's 2 miles a year. I got to get there.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe. I did play basketball. So.
Oh, that covered it. You're good.
All right, so we'll get back a little bit to the what we're talking about. But what do you think? I always try to get people to look into the future a little bit. What do you see coming for menus, diets? I know I've always thought when I was helping run our kitchens, doing more with less, right? Because budgets don't seem to go up very often. But I do think you're seeing some of the pendulum swing back to, like, we want better food because we want the inmates to be manageable. We want them to be in good spirits, healthy when they leave, perhaps. So where do you think the future is taking the food service industry and corrections?
Mm-hmm. I think that we are, and that was part of what brought me to Skillet, is that I'm such a big proponent of that. I mean, food fuels your brain, right? So it's if you are eating good food, you are more likely to have better mental health and just feel better and be less angry or sad or whatever it is, and whatever we can do to help. I mean, that's huge. So I think if we're feeding them good food within reason, of course, that's amazing. Versus, some companies that just put slop on the plate, and that would make me cranky too.
Right.
I mean, so that is awesome. And then, just kind of how it's building, like we're kind of playing catch up, right? We have so many facilities that we're trying to get them new menus and all of that so that they're not eating the same things. And then, we just want to keep building it, right? We're trying to build it from there and help more and more facilities and kind of bring our reach further. With that being said, it's nice from my perspective, I've already learned a lot as I've been going and how to tweak things and give them better nutrition for the price and all of that. So I think it's just going to get easier for us to look at our vendors' catalogs and, bring in new items and bring in new recipes and bring in new ideas so that we can, again, with the budgeting, stay at a good spot, but just add more and more variety and just even more quality and consistency with things as we go. Because I think once we're not trying to kind of come out of not the weeds, but not trying to rebuild what we had, once we're able to just move forward, there's just more and more room for growth and just making sure that it's, the menus are getting better and better and better and that we're pleasing people more and more. Yeah. That's how I see it.
Perfect. Kylie, anything else?
I don't think so, but thank you so much for being on. I learned a lot today.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
It's perfect. Thank you for joining us, Rachel. And then,
talk about food anytime.
That's right. I think we're going to do, coming up, we've got 5 or 6 new people in the building. I think we're going to get an episode pretty soon with some young people that are new to the world of corrections. So that's going to be coming up soon.
I think 6 exactly, and one might be hiding below the camera right now.
That's
So
right. Guest number 1. That's it.
Buckle up.
So, Kylie, tell everybody where they can find us.
as always, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify at JailTalk Podcast. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube and Instagram. And you can always find us at turnkeycorrections.com.
All right. Thanks for joining us on Jail Talk. We'll see you next time for a new episode.